as I've kind of grown into that role, and frankly as my Italian's gotten better, I spend a lot of time in the mornings while my wife is still asleep reading the Italian paper. I read several Italian papers a day, and you start learning a lot. And one of the things that I've learned is, growing up in the United States, I had an aberrant belief that the United States was the world and everything else was kind of something else that was on a map somewhere in a classroom that I never really looked at. You read enough foreign newspapers, you live the life a little bit, and you say, you know, the United States is an important part of the world, but it's just a part of the world. And it shouldn't be a big discovery, but it is to a lot of people. And that's why we're so glad at Baker Donelson to partner with this group, which is completely committed to educating everybody about these things that we discover later on in our careers. So again, we're delighted to host. Make yourself at home. We'll clean the dishes. And let me turn this over to Jim and we can move forward.
Again, good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to what we expect to be a very, very interesting conversation with Senator Corker. I'm Jim Shepard. I'm the chairman of the Tennessee World Affairs Council. And before we get going, I want to first of all thank Baker Donelson for graciously making the venue available to us and all the support they've given us. They've been a good partner with World Affairs Council and a number of different events that we've been able to put together over the years. Also, I want to recognize the Nashville Chamber and the International Business Council in particular for the partnership that we've had with them. And of course, Belmont University, who is also one of our lead partners. And we work together with them to educate a lot of their students on world events. And they give us quite a bit of support in return. So it's a very good relationship back and forth. I'd like to recognize a couple of individuals with us today. First of all, Representative Jim Cooper. Represents the 5th District in the U.S. Congress. Also, the Consul General from Japan, Nishimura. And finally, Pat Ryan, our President of Tennessee World Affairs Council, who is really the brains behind everything that happens around here. Thank you. Just a couple quick comments about the Tennessee World Affairs Council. We are a non-profit, nonpartisan organization, and we're focused on education and educating the population of Tennessee on global events, how those global events impact everybody here in Tennessee. And our goal is to have a more enlightened and educated population so that when we go to the polls and make decisions, we're doing that from a basis of fact rather than opinion. We have outreach programs with high schools, with colleges, universities, and with the population as a whole. This is one of our events that is targeted to the general population. So those of you who are not members today, we certainly would encourage you to join. We have programming several events every month, sometimes multiple events during the month. It's a very interesting organization, and we have a website that has all the details. It's tnwac.org. tnworldaffairscouncil.org. So you can find all the information that's focused on that. So before we get started here, I have a couple quick comments about Senator Corker. We certainly appreciate you coming here, and Senator Corker has been very involved with Tennessee World Affairs Council as well. One of the events we have is a Academic World Quest competition for high school students, where it's kind of like the old Quiz Bowl, if anybody that remembers that from a long time ago. It's conducted throughout the entire country, and the winners from Tennessee and the different states then go to D.C. for a national competition. And Senator Corker was very gracious to spend time with our delegation on a couple of occasions. Spent time talking to the high school students, and Representative Cooper did the same thing earlier this year. You can imagine, as a high school student, to have the ability to go in and spend half an hour with people of this stature, that's very impressive. And we certainly appreciate everything you guys do to make that happen for us. Senator Corker's been one of the senators from Tennessee since 2007. I think was 2007 was it the first year? And that happened to be about the same time Tennessee World Affairs Council was created. So we've kind of been around for basically the same amount of period of time in this arena anyway. Former mayor of Chattanooga, former businessman, but today is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And as such, Senator Corker certainly has some insights that most of us don't have, and we're looking forward to being able to hear what those insights may be. But before we get to that point, we want to recognize Senator Corker for everything he has done, not only for Tennessee World Affairs Council or for the citizens of Tennessee, but also for everybody in the United States. In his role as the Foreign Relations Committee Chairman, very, very influential, very, very important in the conduct of U.S. foreign policy around the world, and it's something that I think we should all be very proud of, that a fellow Tennessean has been able to do that and represent our country so well. And in recognition of that, we have our inaugural award that Logan Monday will give us a little bit more detail on that before we make the presentation.
Good afternoon. Tennessee World Affairs Council 2018 Global Affairs Leadership Award is presented to Senator Bob Corker in recognition of his outstanding contribution to the security, prosperity, and standing of the United States of America while serving Tennessee as U.S. Senator, Chairman, and Ranking Member of the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations from 2013 to 2018. The U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations is charged with leading foreign policy, legislation, and the debate in the Senate while upholding their congressional responsibilities. Senator Corker distinguished himself as chairman in charting a course for U.S. foreign policy by, among many other achievements, holding the committee above political rancor, creating a national dialogue for the Iran nuclear deal, co-authoring punishing sanctions on the Russian Federation for its intervention in Ukraine and interference in our U.S. elections, while working tirelessly to put an end to human trafficking and modern slavery. Simply put, Senator Corker put into practice what American leadership should be in the world and for Tennessee. For his exceptional service to the people of Tennessee and the United States of America, the Tennessee World Affairs Council is pleased to present Senator Corker the 2018 Global Affairs Leadership Award. Signed on this date by Patrick Ryan and Jim Shepard, President and Chairman of the Tennessee World Affairs Council.
Thank you so much for having me today and honoring me in this way, and for all of you gathering. I'm a little out of practice. I haven't been giving many speeches lately, thankfully, but it's great to be with all of you, and I do look forward to a conversation today. I did one this weekend. It was kind of interesting. It's someone's 70th birthday party, and John Meacham and I kind of had a conversation. He first spoke about his book. And then we had sort of an informal conversation and then some questions from the audience. And as I sat there listening to him, I thought, my gosh, here's a person who's a historian, knows so much about all that's happened, especially with American presidents, but so much about foreign policy. And I just realized that we couldn't have been different people. I know nothing about history. Other than almost what I've learned in place. I'm kind of a journeyman, on-the-job training, and that's really what has happened with me in foreign policy. And so I don't go out giving highbrow speeches. I basically have learned on the ground, traveling to 78 or 9 countries on your behalf, some of them over and over again, because just like in your businesses, you spend 80% of your time on problems, 20% of your time on opportunity. So I'm glad to be here today to have a conversation. And before we move to that, I did want to acknowledge that Jim Cooper is here. One of the questions, Jim, that came up in the audience this weekend was, remember when Senator X on the other side of the aisle did something to you after y'all had worked together for months to try to cause the bill to become law? Aren't you upset with him? And I said, actually, no, I love him. And, you know, I've just found that when you're trying to deal with your nation's problems or your state's problems, that things like that that come up, you just kind of put them aside and realize that somebody's going to surprise you in a good way right around the corner. I've never had any negative surprises with Jim Cooper, ever. And I just want to say to all of you, I love working with Jim Cooper, and I'm glad that he represents Nashville in the way that he does. He's a little bit more of a curmudgeon than and I'm kind of an internal optimist, and so we balance each other out. It's a pretty good combination, but you know, I think about being in the House and the minority would make you a little bit of a curmudgeon. And then to be in a party where he's probably one of the most rational people there and has to deal with some of the things that go on there, that would make you that way. But Jim, it's good to be with you, and I look forward to working with you in the private sector as we move ahead. I've served with 3 presidents. Each of them were very, very different. When I came into the Senate, let me digress. A reporter came up and mentioned something to me a minute ago. Eric did. I remember 12 years ago, this moment in time, a week before the election, when you had no idea who was going to win. And my heart goes out to those who are in the middle of this. It is just an incredible period of time. And as I understand it, the race is pretty close. I don't know, you know what the internal polling is, you know. You want to share with very close. But it is so nice to come here with not a trouble in the world. Not to be thinking about it. I remembered on election night, my hometown is Chattanooga. As you know, I came over this morning. It rained like the Dickens in Hamilton County on election day, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be the difference in the race. And anyway, I'm not thinking about those things today. I'm just thinking about having fun with y'all. I've served under 3 presidents, with 3 presidents, not under. George Bush was a person who certainly had no intentions of being a divisive president. He ran as a compassionate conservative. 9/11 changed the trajectory of his presidency dramatically. I think the thing that took the wind out of his sails more than that, though, was Katrina, where people viewed him as a racist, when that couldn't be farther from the truth. He's a person with a big heart, and I think he came into office truly to unify our country. And by the time I got there, the Iraq War had become very, very unpopular. And one of the first big debates that we had on the Senate floor was whether we would surge in Iraq to try to overcome what had happened and to try to salvage something good after all the hundreds of billions of dollars and so many lives had been lost and so many bodies maimed. And so that was my introduction to the United States Senate, was beginning that debate. Barack Obama served on the Foreign Relations Committee. And like you, I'm sure when you go to the grocery store, the drugstore, the cleaners, it seems that you bump into the same people over and over again because your schedules end up being the same. Well, with him, it seemed like we always went to vote at the same time. I don't know why that happened. And so we'd ride that little tram that many of you have seen under the Capitol to vote, and we'd be talking. And you know, so I was able to talk with him during the time that he was thinking about running for president. And, you know, there was such a movement behind him, I don't think he had a choice. I don't think when you have that many people wishing for you to do it, he did, obviously. And I became, you know, I was very involved in foreign policy and very involved with their administration. I think he ran not hoping to be, I think he ran on hope, actually, and wanted to be a unifying president, and obviously ended up being a very divisive president by the time it was all said and done. And now we have President Trump, who obviously, I say this just as an observation, where division is actually a governing strategy, right? And so it's interesting to watch how the evolution of that has been. The foreign policy pieces, you know, it's interesting, really, we haven't changed that much. The rhetoric around foreign policy has changed a great deal, obviously. But the direction of where we're going hasn't changed quite as much as gets amplified. We're still doing the same things with NATO. Actually, we're doing things in Eastern Europe in a better way than we've done them in the past, although the rhetoric around NATO has not been something that I've appreciated. If you look at the fact that President Trump wanted to leave Afghanistan, and yet we're still there doing the things that we were doing when he came in. If you look at Syria, we've actually plussed up, right? One of the things that the Trump administration has done to their credit is they've actually given the generals the ability to do the things that they were hired to do. Under President Obama, again, a friend of mine, this is just an observation, everything that was done had to be laid out. There were caveats, there were all kinds of discussions, and so the military in some ways was somewhat frozen. And I will say that this may be a plus or a minus depending on how you look at it. Our current president has just said to the military leaders, hey, go get the bad guys and don't give me the details. And so they aren't, and they are. And so Syria has actually gone in a much better way as it relates to routing out ISIS. We still, in my opinion, have a moral stain on our own country for the way that it's going to end up and for not intervening at a time where we could have made a difference. But again, if you look at the trajectory of what we've done in Syria, the trajectory of what we've done in Iraq, where we now have stayed and now had a successful election, if you look at the trajectory in Afghanistan, they're very similar to what each president began, what a president continued, and what is still happening today. Obviously, the rhetoric around the United States and our involvement in the world is very different. And yet, as I look at the activities that are underway, many of the activities are still continuing. Some of that is for consumption here in the United States. It's actually for domestic consumption, let's face it. But we really haven't changed a great deal of where our foreign policy emphasis has been. When I came in, the whole focus on Russia was different than it is today. Russia obviously has shown itself to be a bad player in the world politics. Everything that we do, they try to counter these days. We did have a president who came in, again, rhetorically, in a very different place than the last president. Actually, the last president had hoped to build a bridge with Russia. It didn't pan out so well. But in this particular case, Congress had to step in. Jim and I both voted for a piece of legislation that overwhelmingly passed that forced the administration to place sanctions on Russia and to put them in a place where the world is ostracizing, if you will, their malign activities as it relates to Western democracies. China obviously has been on the rise. It's been a much bigger concern to our country. They've tried to fill the gap that our rhetoric is leaving behind as it relates to us being, if you will, the leader of the world. We still are. The rhetoric's just not the same as it used to be. But China obviously is going to continue to rise. They've got economic issues right now. They're going to come more into play in the next several years as the growth slows. And they're going to end up likely being a much larger GDP than we are. And so over time, we've got to deal with that. History's been replete with countries who end up over time displacing another country as the leader of the world, if you will, and sometimes that leads to war. That's something, obviously, we don't want to see happen. With that, let me just stop, if I could, and take questions from you. My point is that in spite of the rhetoric, the United States still is carrying out the same types of foreign policy that began, that were there in place when I began as United States Senator. rhetoric is very different. The communication to the American people is very different. The communication to the world is actually different. But if you look at the places that we have been involved militarily or where we have strategic interests, we'll still carrying out much of the same policies. And with that, let me just stop and take any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
Senator, one would assume that the North Koreans have been busy building additional nuclear weapons and ICBMs every month since the summit. And as time goes by, time's not on our side for any negotiations. What are your expectations?
What was the last sentence?
What are your expectations for negotiations with North Korea?
So, look, I think everyone knows that Singapore was basically a press conference. Nothing of material nature happened. It was more of a meeting. But look, I'm glad it took place. I do think that it's obviously caused tensions in the region to diminish. The new envoy that we have that used to be an executive at Ford Motor Company is a real serious person. He's somebody that I think if he came and talked to you about what he was doing, you would be incredibly impressed. Just came in about 30 days ago into our office to give us another download. They're looking for North Korea to take some steps that are real. I know they've announced that they may close a certain facility that they act like might be their central facility. It's not, by the way, but at least it's something that would demonstrate that they're willing to begin to take some steps to denuclearize. I have a lot of faith in Mike Pompeo, just for what it's worth. He's a serious guy. He was kind of a Tea Party, right-wing kind of congressman from Kansas. And he came into the role of CIA and became a serious person for 15 months. Learned about the world. I find his strategic thinking to be very, very good. He's obviously leading this effort right now as it relates to North Korea. On his most recent return, again, nothing substantive has happened yet, but my expectations are that my thoughts are that we have the best opportunity we've had in 20 years to change the dynamic. I'll give you one vignette. On his first trip, Pompeo is standing in a window looking outside with Kim Jong-un. The only person there is the interpreter. And Kim Jong-un looks at him, and first of all, Pompeo looks out and it's sunset. And he said, that's the most beautiful sunset I have ever seen in my life. Kim Jong-un, through the translator, says, it is. And it's like that here every single night. And that entire shoreline should be lined with nothing but American hotels. And so I do think some of the economic issues that, did that shock you? Yeah, so I think some of the economic issues that North Korea is dealing with, I think the leader understands that the model they have cannot continue. Do I trust that they're going to denuclearize over the next 2 years? I do not. Do I think the dialogue we're having with them is a good thing? I do. And hopefully at some point we'll get to a place where we're actually talking about substantive denuclearization. But I have to say, I'm not much for having press conferences where you don't do much. I probably wouldn't have been my nature to do what happened in Singapore, but I do think that the door has been opened to some progress that would be obviously very good for our world. China has backed off recently, which is a little bit concerning. They're not really applying the pressures that they were applying 3 or 4 months ago. So that's a little bit of a deterioration. But obviously the relations between South and North Korea have improved vastly, and I'm hopeful that over time this